The rain was falling slowly outside the most expensive restaurant in the city, and inside, golden lights were shining on crystal glasses and white tables. But no one was really talking about the food that night, because everyone was whispering about one man, the young and powerful CEO, Daniel Carter, who was known for his cold face, sharp mind, and a heart that people believed was made of stone. And tonight he was coming for a blind date arranged by his grandmother, who was tired of seeing him alone. The waiters were nervous. The manager kept checking the door. And even some guests secretly hoped to see what kind of woman could possibly sit across from a man like him. A man who owned hotels, companies, and half the city's respect. And when a black luxury car finally stopped outside, all eyes turned to the entrance as Daniel stepped out, wearing a dark suit that looked simple, but probably cost more than most. People's monthly salary, his expression calm, unreadable, almost bored. And he walked inside without looking at anyone, yet everyone looked at him. And the restaurant became so quiet that even the sound of heels on the floor seemed loud. And the manager quickly guided him to a private table near the window where a single candle burned softly. But when Daniel reached the table, he stopped. For a second, not because he was nervous, but because the girl sitting there did not look like what anyone expected. She wore a loose brown dress that did not fit well. Her hair was messy, like she had cut it herself. Big round glasses covered half her face. And she was holding her bag tightly as if she wanted to disappear. And some guests nearby began whispering louder, confused, maybe even amused, because this did not look like a woman chosen for the most eligible bachelor in the city. And Daniel's assistant, who had followed quietly behind him, leaned closer and whispered, "Sir, there must be a mistake." But Daniel did not answer. He simply looked at the girl carefully. Not with disgust, not with laughter, just with quiet attention. And then he pulled out the chair and sat down in front of her. And that simple action made a few people gasp because they expected him to leave immediately. The girl slowly lifted her eyes and forced a small, nervous smile. Her name was Emily. But tonight she did not look like the real Emily, because the real Emily was confident, graceful, and naturally beautiful. Yet she had chosen to hide all of that behind thick glasses and loose clothes, because she wanted to test him. She had heard too many stories about rich men who only loved beauty and status. Men who showed kindness only when cameras were watching. And she refused to become another decoration in someone's perfect life. So she made a bold decision. She would pretend to be unattractive, shy, even a little awkward, and if he walked away, she would know the truth. But she did not expect her heart to beat so fast when he sat down calmly, as if nothing was strange. And for a moment neither of them spoke. The candle flickered between them, and outside thunder rolled softly. And finally Daniel broke the silence with a simple question. "Did you wait long?" His voice was low but polite. Not cold, not warm, just steady. And Emily quickly shook her head and accidentally knocked her water glass, spilling it onto the tablecloth, and a few people nearby laughed quietly. One woman even whispered, "How embarrassing," and Emily felt her cheeks burn. She wanted to disappear. But before she could apologize, Daniel calmly took a napkin and helped clean the table. Then he signaled the waiter kindly, not angrily, and said, "Please bring another glass," his tone calm but firm. And the laughter around them slowly faded because he did not seem ashamed at all. And Emily looked at him carefully, wondering if this was just good manners or something deeper. So she decided to push her test further. She began speaking in a slightly awkward way, pretending to be unsure of herself. Telling him she worked a simple job at a small bookstore and did not earn much money. She even added that she still lived in an old apartment with her parents because she could not afford to move out. And she watched his face carefully, waiting for the small sign of disappointment, the small change in his eyes that would show he was judging her. But Daniel simply listened, his fingers resting calmly on the table. And he asked about her favorite books, and when she mentioned a classic love story, he asked why she liked it. And Emily hesitated because she did not expect that question. And for a second, she forgot to act and spoke honestly, saying she believed love should feel safe, not loud. And when she realized she had spoken from her heart, she quickly looked down again, pretending to be shy, But Daniel's eyes softened, just slightly, something almost invisible, yet real. And at the same time across the room, two young women were whispering and taking pictures secretly, already planning to post online about the strange blind date between the famous CEO and what they cruelly called the plain girl. The rain became heavier, as if the world itself was holding its breath, and inside Emily decided to take one more risk. She purposely dropped her fork, bending down clumsily to pick it up, and again she heard a soft laugh from another table. But this time Daniel's jaw tightened just a little, and when he looked up, his gaze was sharp enough to silence the whispers without a single word, and he quietly asked the waiter for a new fork without showing any sign of irritation toward her. And Emily felt something unexpected. She felt safe.
Oh.
Which made her confused because this was not how the story in her head was supposed to go. She thought he would leave or at least show discomfort, but instead he asked her if she liked the rain, and she blinked, surprised by the simple question, and she nodded, saying she liked how rain made the world quiet. And Daniel looked outside at the glass covered with drops and said softly, "I like it too. It hides noise." And for a moment the space between them felt calm, almost private, as if the expensive restaurant and watching eyes did not exist. And yet Emily remembered her goal. She needed to see how far his patience would go. So she admitted that she was not good at dressing well and did not care much about fashion, and she waited again, but Daniel simply replied, "Comfort is more important than style," and when the food arrived, she pretended not to know how to hold the knife properly, but he did not correct her or look annoyed. He simply adjusted his own plate and continued talking about simple things like travel, childhood memories, and favorite seasons. And each answer he gave was honest, but not proud. And the more he spoke, the more Emily noticed something strange. He was not trying to impress her. He was not talking about money or power. He was speaking like a normal man who was tired of being seen only as a title, and suddenly she wondered if he was also testing her in his own way, and that thought made her nervous. Because what if he could see through her act? What if he already knew she was pretending? And just then her phone vibrated inside her bag. A message from her best friend asking how the ugly experiment was going, and Emily quickly silenced it, hoping Daniel had not heard, but his eyes briefly moved toward her bag, and then back to her face. Calm as ever, and somewhere near the entrance, a tall man in a dark coat stepped inside quietly, his eyes scanning the room, stopping on Daniel, and his expression was not friendly. But Emily did not notice him yet because she was too busy trying to understand the man sitting in front of her. The man who was supposed to fail her test, but instead was quietly passing it without even trying. And as thunder echoed again outside, Daniel leaned slightly forward and asked, "Why did you agree to this blind date?" And Emily froze for a second because she did not prepare an answer for that question, and she quickly said it was her mother's idea. And Daniel nodded slowly, as if he understood more than she said, and in that moment, the tall man near the entrance took out his phone and secretly took a photo of them, a small smile forming on his lips, as if he had just found something useful.
Ow.
And back at the table, Emily felt a strange mix of guilt and curiosity, because this blind date was no longer just a game. It was becoming something real, something she could not control. And when Daniel suddenly said, "People think I care about beauty, but I care about peace," she looked up sharply, wondering if that sentence was meant for her, and he added softly, "The world is loud. I don't want loud love." And those simple words entered her heart deeper than she expected, making her question if pretending was fair anymore. But before she could decide anything, the lights flickered for a second because of the storm, and in that brief darkness, she heard another table laughing again. When the lights returned, Daniel was already looking at her with a calm strength that made the laughter feel small. And in that moment, Emily realized something shocking. She was no longer testing him. She was slowly losing control of her own heart. And somewhere behind them, the tall man sent the photo he had taken to someone with a short message that read, "This will ruin him." And the night that was supposed to be a simple test was quietly turning into something much bigger. Something neither of them could see yet, as the rain continued to fall and the candle between them burned lower, holding secrets that were about to change both their lives forever. The storm outside grew stronger, and inside the restaurant, the soft music continued to play as if nothing unusual was happening. But the air around Daniel and Emily's table felt different now, heavier, full of unspoken thoughts, and Emily could not stop thinking about the photo that unknown man had taken. Even though she had not clearly seen him, she felt like someone was watching, and Daniel, who had sharp instincts from years of running a powerful company, also sensed that something was not right. But he did not show it on his face, because showing worry in public was something he never did. Instead, he calmly poured more water into Emily's glass and asked her if she liked dessert. And she blinked in surprise at how normal he sounded, as if gossip and whispers did not exist, as if the world outside their table did not matter, and she quickly nodded, pretending to be shy again, telling herself she must stay focused on her plan. She must not forget that this was only a test. But deep inside, her heart was slowly changing its rhythm, because she had expected arrogance, cold silence, or polite distance. Yet what she was receiving was attention, respect, and something she did not dare to name yet. Across the room, the tall man in the dark coat stepped outside to make a call, his voice low and serious as he said, "He is here with a strange-looking girl." "Yes, I have pictures. This will spread fast." And on the other end of the line, someone laughed softly, clearly pleased. Because Daniel Carter had many business rivals, and any small weakness could become big news by morning, especially when social media loved drama more than truth, and the man in the coat smiled again before hanging up, unaware that this simple act would create a storm bigger than the one outside. Back at the table, dessert arrived, a beautiful chocolate cake placed carefully in front of Emily, and she stared at it as if she had never seen such a thing before, which made Daniel almost smile, and when she awkwardly tried to cut it, making a small mess again. He gently moved the plate closer to himself and cut a neat piece for her without saying anything about her clumsiness. And this small gesture confused her even more, because no man had ever treated her like this when she tried to look unattractive. Usually they became uncomfortable or distant, but Daniel seemed patient, steady, almost protective, and she wondered if this was how he truly was, or if he was simply very good at hiding his real thoughts. "So," Daniel said after a quiet moment, "what makes you happy?" The question was simple, yet it felt heavy. Emily had prepared answers about her job and daily routine, but not about happiness. So she paused, then said softly, "Peace makes me happy, and no one expects me to be perfect." Daniel's eyes did not leave her face. "That is rare," he replied. "Most people want attention. And you?" she asked before she could stop herself. He leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. "I want honesty," he said.
"Even if it is
uncomfortable." Those words hit her like a quiet warning. Honesty? She was not being honest. She was acting. And for the first time that evening, guilt touched her heart. At the same time, near the entrance, two young women who had taken pictures earlier were already posting online. CEO Daniel Carter on blind date with mysterious plain girl, and comments started appearing within minutes. Some laughing, some curious, some cruel, because the internet never waited for truth. It only wanted entertainment, and as notifications increased. The photo taken by the man in the dark coat was also uploaded anonymously to a popular gossip page, spreading quickly like wildfire. Emily's phone vibrated again. This time, she could not ignore it. She glanced at the screen, saw dozens of notifications. Her stomach tightened. Daniel noticed the change in her face. "Is everything okay?" he asked calmly. She hesitated, then showed him the screen. For a brief second, his eyes darkened, not with shame, not with anger toward her, but with understanding. "They work fast," he said quietly. "You're not embarrassed?" she asked carefully. He looked at her directly. "Should I be?" The question made her speechless. Before she could answer, his own phone started vibrating, and his assistant, who had been waiting at a distance, stepped closer, looking worried. "Sir, the board members are calling. The photos are everywhere." Daniel remained seated. I will call them later, he said simply. The assistant looked shocked. Sir, this could damage your image? Daniel's expression became firm. My image is not built on a dinner, he replied. The assistant stepped back silently. Emily's heart beat faster. Why was he not angry? Why was he not leaving? The whispers in the restaurant grew louder as more people checked their phones, recognizing the trending story. And some even openly stared at Emily now, as if she had committed a crime by sitting there. But Daniel, suddenly, stood up, not to leave her, but to move his chair slightly closer to hers, creating a small wall between her and the watching eyes. And this simple action made the room even quieter. Would you like some air? He asked her. She nodded. Overwhelmed, they walked toward the balcony area where rain hit the glass walls heavily. And the city lights looked blurry through the storm, and for a moment they stood side by side without speaking, the noise of rain covering the noise of gossip, and Emily finally whispered, You can leave. I understand. This is bad for you. Daniel turned to look at her. I don't run because of noise, he said calmly. If I did, I would never have built anything. She swallowed. But people are laughing. You always laugh, he answered. Today it's you.
What?
It's someone else. His calmness felt stronger than anger. She looked at him carefully, searching for pride or hidden frustration. But she saw only control and something softer underneath. I need to ask you something, he said suddenly. Her heart jumped. Yes, are you pretending? The world seemed to stop. The rain, the lights, the whispers, everything felt distant. She forced a small, confused smile. Pretending. Yes, he said gently. You don't look uncomfortable in your own skin. You look like someone acting uncomfortable. Her breath caught. Was she that obvious? Before she could answer, his phone rang again. This time his expression changed slightly when he saw the caller ID. It's my grandmother, said. He stepped aside to answer, speaking softly, and Emily could hear a faint elderly voice. Through the speaker, worried, asking about the news online. And Daniel reassured her calmly, telling her not to believe everything she saw. And when he ended the call, he returned to Emily with the same steady expression. You don't have to. Answer my question now, he said. But I don't like games. The word games made her cheeks burn. At that exact moment, inside the restaurant, someone shouted, It's on national news now. The gossip had become bigger. A television near the bar was showing their photos. CEO's mysterious date sparks. Online debate. Emily felt panic rising in her chest. This is my fault, she whispered. Daniel looked at the screen for a second, then back at her. No, he said firmly. This is the world's fault for thinking it owns private moments. His calm strength made her chest tighten with emotion. Outside, a tall man in the dark coat watched through the glass, satisfied, sending another message. Phase 1 complete. But he did not know Daniel as well as he thought. Daniel turned to Emily again. Do you trust me? He asked suddenly. The question surprised her. She barely knew him, yet something inside her felt safe, I think. Yes, she answered softly. Then leave with me, he said. They walked through the restaurant together, ignoring the cameras, the whispers, the stares. And Daniel did not let go of her hand even once. And when they stepped into the storm, rain immediately soaked the ground around them. But his car was already waiting, and as they got inside, Emily looked back at the bright restaurant. Realizing that her simple test had turned into a public storm she'd never planned, and as the car drove away into the rainy night, she had no idea that this was only the beginning. Because the photos spreading online were not just gossip. They were part of a bigger plan to destroy Daniel's reputation, and soon she would have to decide whether to continue pretending or finally tell him the truth. And Daniel, sitting beside her silently, was already thinking several steps ahead. Because he had seen the man in the dark coat before, and he knew exactly which rival was trying to use this blind date as a weapon. And this time, he was not just protecting his company, he was protecting the girl sitting beside him, whether she was pretending or not. And as lightning flashed across the sky, both of them felt it clearly. The night had changed everything, and there was no simple way back. The rain had not stopped when Daniel's car entered the quiet road that led away from the bright city center. The windows were covered with small drops of water, and the world outside looked blurry and distant. Inside the car, silence filled the space between Daniel and Emily. The driver focused on the road, pretending not to hear anything, but the tension inside the car was strong. Emily sat still, her hands folded tightly in her lap. Her mind was full of noise. The test had gone too far. What started as a simple plan to check a man's heart had now become public drama. Her phone kept vibrating in her bag, but she was too afraid to look at it again. Daniel, on the other hand, looked calm. After a few minutes, he spoke. "You live far from here?" Emily hesitated. She had told him earlier that she lived in a small, old apartment. That part was not completely false, but it was not fully true either. "Not too far," she replied quietly. Daniel nodded once, did not push her, but inside his mind, he was thinking about the man in the dark coat. He was almost certain he had seen him before at a business event, standing beside Victor Hale, his biggest rival. Victor had been trying for years to bring Daniel down. Not because Daniel was weak, because Daniel was stronger. Daniel took out his phone and sent a short message to his security head. Check who was inside the restaurant tonight. Especially tall male, dark coat, urgent. He put the phone away and looked at Emily. "You're shaking," he said softly. She quickly stopped moving her hands. "I'm fine." "You're not used to attention like this." It was not a question. It was a fact. Emily forced a small smile. "No, I'm not." The car stopped at a red light. Outside, a motorcycle slowed down near them. Daniel's eyes moved slightly toward the side mirror. Something felt wrong. The motorcycle rider lifted a phone, took a picture through the window. The light turned green. The motorcycle quickly disappeared into traffic. Emily gasped. "They're following us." Daniel's voice stayed steady. "Yes. You knew? I suspected." Her heart beat faster. "Is this because of me?" We turned to look at her directly. "No, it's because of me." The car moved faster now. The driver received a quiet instruction through his earpiece and changed directions suddenly. Emily noticed. "Why are we not going straight?" "For safety," Daniel answered simply. The rain grew heavier, hitting the car roof loudly. City lights became fewer as they entered a quieter area, filled with tall trees and large houses. "Where are we going?" she asked nervously. "My house." Her eyes widened. "Your house?" "Yes. It's safer than dropping you somewhere random tonight." She froze. This was not part of her plan. She was supposed to go home. Remove the glasses, wash off the fake doll makeup, laugh with her friend about the experiment, and forget everything. But nothing was normal anymore. The car finally entered a large gate that opened automatically. Security guards stood near the entrance. Cameras turned slowly above. Emily had never seen a house like this in real life. It was not just big, it was powerful. The car stopped under a covered area, and a staff member quickly opened the door for them. Daniel stepped out first, then offered his hand to Emily. She hesitated for a second before taking it. Inside, the house was quiet, warm, and simple in design. Not too flashy, not too golden. Just elegant. "You can wait in the living room," Daniel said gently. "I need to make a few calls." She nodded slowly. As he walked away, Emily finally took out her phone. Her social media was exploding. Thousands of comments. Some laughing, some insulting, some defending. Her fake appearance was being discussed like it was a public show. Is this his joke? Why is he with her? She must be after his money. Her chest felt tight. She never expected it to go this far. Tears slowly filled her eyes. For the first time, she felt the weight of pretending. Meanwhile, in Daniel's private office upstairs, his calm face finally changed. His security team had already sent him photos. The man in the dark coat was confirmed. Victor. Hale's assistant, Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. Victor had chosen the wrong method. This time, this was not just business. This was personal. Daniel made a short call. "Prepare a press statement for tomorrow morning," he said, "and schedule a board meeting." Sir, his assistant replied carefully. The board is not happy. They believe this situation makes you look unstable. Daniel's voice became colder. If they think I'm unstable because of a dinner, they can resign. Ended the call for a moment. He stood alone in the quiet room. He thought about Emily, her nervous hands, her shaking voice, her eyes when she saw the news. And then he remembered.
Oh, something else.
The moment on the balcony, when he asked if she was pretending, she had not answered, but her silence had answered enough. He walked back downstairs. Emily quickly wiped her tears when she heard his steps. He noticed, but he did not mention it. I've arranged a guest room for you, he said calmly. You shouldn't. Go home tonight. She stood up suddenly. No, I can't stay here. She opened her mouth, then closed it again, because she could not say the truth, because if she stayed, her lie would feel even heavier. Daniel walked a little closer. You're afraid, said quietly. I'm not used to this world. She whispered. He studied her face carefully. Then tell me something honest, he said. Not about your job, not about money, just something real. Her heart pounded. This was her chance. She could tell him everything. She could remove the glasses. She could admit the test. But fear stopped her. If he felt betrayed, he would never forgive her, so she whispered, I don't like being judged. Daniel's expression softened slightly. Neither do I. Silence again. Then suddenly one of the security guards entered quickly, sir. Daniel turned. There's a car outside the main gate. It has been parked there for 15 minutes. Emily's stomach dropped. Daniel did not look surprised. Victor, he said quietly. Emily felt cold. Who is Victor? My rival, Daniel answered. And he doesn't play small games. As if on cue, Daniel's phone rang again. Unknown number, he answered. A familiar voice spoke with a light laugh. Daniel, must say your taste in women is very interesting. Daniel's voice stayed calm. What do you want, Victor? Nothing serious, Victor replied smoothly. Just enjoying the show. Investors are nervous. Your image is shaking. Daniel glanced at Emily. She's not part of your business. Victor laughed softly. Everything connected to you is my business. The line went dead. Emily felt fear growing in her chest. This is because of me, she said again. Daniel looked at her seriously. No, he repeated. This is because he thinks I care about public opinion more than truth. And do you? She asked quietly. He looked at her for a long second. Not as much as he thinks. The tension in the room was heavy. The storm outside finally began to calm. But a different storm had started. Emily realized something important. She was no longer testing a man for fun. She was standing inside a battle she did not understand. And Daniel was not just a rich CEO. He was a man surrounded by enemies. Suddenly, the lights flickered once. Then everything went dark. The entire house lost power, Emily gasped. Security voices echoed in the distance. Daniel immediately stepped closer to her. Stay behind me. Emergency lights slowly turned on, dim and red. Footsteps were heard outside. Emily's breathing became fast. Is this him? She whispered. Daniel's face was serious now. He's trying to scare us. A loud noise came from the main gate. Metal hitting metal. Emily instinctively grabbed Daniel's arm, and in that moment, neither of them thought about pretending gossip or tests. They only thought about survival. Daniel pulled out his phone flashlight. Come, he said calmly. They moved carefully toward the hallway. Security guards rushed past them toward the entrance. Another loud bang. Emily's heart felt like it would explode. Then suddenly, silence. Complete silence. A guard's voice came through a radio. Sir, the car is gone. Daniel stood still for a moment. Victor had made his message clear. This was only the beginning. Emily looked at Daniel's face in the red emergency light. He did not look scared. He looked determined, and for the first time, she understood something. Deeply, she had tried to test his heart. But tonight, life was testing both of them, and she had no idea how much more dangerous things were about to become. The emergency lights slowly faded as the backup power returned, and the house became bright again. But the calm light did not remove the tension in the air. The storm outside had almost stopped, yet inside Daniel's home, a different kind of storm was growing stronger. The guards confirmed that the suspicious car had left the area, but no one believed it was a simple coincidence. It was a warning. Emily was still standing close to Daniel, her fingers lightly holding his sleeve without realizing it. When she noticed, she quickly let go and stepped back. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "You don't need to apologize," Daniel replied calmly. "You were scared." She looked down at her oversized shoes. "I'm not used to danger." "Neither am I," he said quietly. "I'm just used to hiding it better." That sentence stayed in her mind. Hiding it better. She was hiding too, but not fear, truth. Daniel turned to his security team. "Double the guards tonight. No one enters without clearance." "Yes, sir." When the staff left the room, silence returned. The large house suddenly felt too big, too empty. "You should rest," Daniel said softly. "It's been a long night." Emily nodded, but she did not move toward the guest room. Instead, she stood there, her heart fighting inside her chest. She could not continue like this. Not after what just happened. Not after he protected her without hesitation. "Daniel," she said suddenly. He stopped walking and turned to her. Her voice was shaking slightly. "There's something I need to tell you." He did not speak. He simply waited. And that made it harder. She slowly reached up and removed her big round glasses. For the first time that night, her eyes were fully visible, clear, bright, not shy. Daniel's expression did not change, but his attention became sharper. Then she lifted her hands to her hair and removed the small clips holding it messily around her face. Her hair fell naturally over her shoulders. She looked different already, more confident, more real. "I'm not what I showed you tonight," she admitted quietly. "I know," Daniel said. Her eyes widened. "You knew?" "Yes." She stared at him in shock. "From when?" "From the first 10 minutes," he answered honestly. "You were acting clumsy. Your posture was confident. Your eyes were not insecure. They were observing." She felt heat rush to her face. "I wanted to test you," she confessed. "I've seen too many rich men who only care about beauty and status. I didn't want to be chosen because of my face." Daniel watched her carefully. "And did I pass your test?" he asked calmly. She swallowed. "Yes." Silence filled the room again. But this silence was different. It was honest. "I'm not poor either," she continued. "I work at a bookstore because I love books. My parents are comfortable. I don't need anyone's money." Daniel nodded slowly. "I didn't." "Think you did? You're not angry?" she asked carefully. He looked at her for a long moment before answering. "I don't like being tested," he said truthfully. "But I understand why you did it." Her chest felt lighter. "But now we have a bigger problem," he added. She knew what he meant. Victor, the photos, the gossip. "This was not part of my plan." She whispered. "It's not your fault," Daniel said again. Victor was waiting for any opportunity. You were simply the excuse. She stepped closer unconsciously. "Why does he hate you so much?" Daniel walked toward the large window, looking out at the wet garden outside. "Because I refused to sell my company to him 3 years ago. He wanted control. I said no. And now he wants revenge." Emily felt a cold chill. "And he thinks I'm your weakness." Daniel turned to look at her. "Are you?" The question was soft but serious. She hesitated. "I don't know." She admitted honestly. He walked back toward her slowly. "Victor believes that if he attacks my personal life, investors will panic. He wants the board to doubt me. And will they?" she asked. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. "They already are." Just then, his phone rang again. This time was the chairman of the board. Daniel answered on speaker. "Daniel." The older man's voice sounded strict. "This situation is damaging. Investors are nervous. The media is laughing. We need stability." "You will have it," Daniel replied calmly. "Then make a statement tomorrow morning." Clarify this. Relationship. Emily felt her heart drop. Clarify, that word sounded like distance. Daniel glanced at her briefly before answering. I will make a statement, he said. Good, the chairman replied. And Daniel? Choose wisely. The call ended. The meaning was clear. Distance yourself. Protect the company. Emily stepped back slowly. I understand, she said quietly. Daniel looked at her. Understand what? Need to protect your company. And maybe that means stepping away from me. His expression hardened slightly. You think I'm that weak? She shook her head quickly. No, but I don't want to be the reason your company suffers. He walked closer until only a small space remained between them. Emily, he said softly, if I give up on something because of pressure, then Victor wins. Not just in business, in life. Her eyes filled with emotion. You barely know me, she whispered. I know enough. Silence again. But this time it felt warm, not tense. Suddenly, Torty head rushed back into the room. Sir, there's news spreading. Daniel took the tablet from him. On the screen was a new headline. Anonymous source claims CEO's date is an actress paid for publicity. Emily gasped. That's not true. Daniel's eyes darkened. Victor was escalating. They're trying to make you look fake, the security head said. Emily's chest tightened with anger. I won't let him do this, she said suddenly. Daniel looked at her carefully. What are you thinking? She took a deep breath. I'll stand beside you tomorrow. Publicly. No more pretending. He studied her face. You ready for that level of attention? She hesitated only 1 second. Yes. He stepped even closer. This will not be simple gossip. This will be pressure. Cameras. Questions. Judgment. I'm tired of hiding, she replied softly. For the first time that night, Daniel allowed himself a small, real smile. Then we face it together. Those words changed everything. Not just the situation, but them. Outside. The rain had completely stopped. The sky was slowly clearing. But somewhere in the city, Victor Hale was watching the news with a confident smile, believing he had already shaken Daniel's world. He did not know that instead of breaking them apart, his attack was pushing them closer. And as Emily stood there without her glasses, without her mask, facing Daniel honestly for the first time, she realized something. Surprising, this was no longer a test. It was real. And tomorrow morning, the entire country would see it. Morning came faster than expected. The city was already awake, buzzing with gossip, headlines, and endless online debates. News channels replayed the restaurant photos again and again. Some people defended Daniel, others mocked him. Investors watched carefully. Competitors waited eagerly. Inside Daniel's house, the atmosphere was calm but focused. Emily stood in front of a mirror in the guest room. She looked at her real reflection. No messy hair, no fake awkward posture, no heavy glasses, or a simple but elegant light. Blue dress that Daniel's assistant had arranged for her early in the morning. It was not flashy, not dramatic, just honest. She took a slow breath. This time, she was not pretending. There was a soft knock on the door. Are you ready? Daniel's voice asked from outside. Yes, she answered. When she opened the door, Daniel paused for half a second. Not because he was surprised, but because she looked confident. Real, you look like yourself, he said quietly. That's the point, she replied. Downstairs, several staff members were preparing for the press conference. It would be held at Daniel's company headquarters in 1 hour. Live broadcast. No edits. No hiding. The assistant approached carefully. Sir, the board members are attending. They expect reassurance. They will get clarity, Daniel said calmly. Emily noticed how everyone around him respected him. Not because he was loud, not because he was angry, because he was steady. The car ride to the company building was quieter than the night before. No storm, no darkness. But the tension was stronger. As they arrived, cameras flashed immediately. Porters crowded the entrance. Microphones were raised. Questions were shouted loudly. Mr. Carter, is this relationship real? She the woman from the viral photos? You aware? of the public reaction, security made a path for them. Daniel stepped out first, then turned and offered his hand to Emily. For one small second, she hesitated. Then she placed her hand in his, and together they walked forward. The building lobby was filled with journalists. The stage had been prepared with microphones and a large company logo behind it. Board members sat in the front row, serious and silent. Victor Hale was not there, but his influence was. Daniel and Emily stood behind the microphones. The room quieted slowly. Daniel spoke first. "Good morning. I will keep this simple." His voice was calm, controlled. "Yes, I had a blind date last night." Murmurs spread lightly. "And yes, the woman standing beside me is the same woman from those photos." All eyes turned to Emily. She stood straight. No mask, no fear. Daniel continued. "Many headlines are focusing on appearance. That tells me something about our society." The room became very quiet. "People are asking why I would date someone who does not fit a certain image. I would like to ask a different question." He paused. "Why do we believe image is more important than character?" The silence deepened. "On values, respect, intelligence, honesty, not appearance." Emily felt her heart beating fast, but steady. Daniel turned slightly toward her. "This is Emily." He did not introduce her as poor or mysterious, just her name. "She is not an actress. She is not paid publicity. She is not a scandal." Reporters quickly typed notes. "She is someone I respect." Those words felt heavier than any dramatic speech. A reporter suddenly raised her voice. "Mr. Carter, are you saying this is a serious relationship?" Daniel looked directly at the cameras. "Yes." Clear. Answer, no hesitation. Another reporter spoke. "Miss Emily, were you aware of Mr. Carter's public status before agreeing to the date?" All eyes moved to her. This was her moment. She stepped slightly closer to the microphone. "Yes," she said honestly. "But I agreed because I wanted to know the man, not the CEO." The simplicity of her words surprised many people. "Did you pretend to look different at the restaurant?" Another reporter asked boldly. The room became tense. Daniel looked at her briefly. This was the truth test. Emily took a deep breath. "Yes," she admitted. Whispers filled the room. "I did." The board members exchanged worried looks. "But not for fame, not for money," she continued calmly. "I did it because I wanted to see if he valued appearance more than personality." The room was silent now, and he didn't, she finished softly. All eyes shifted to Daniel. He did not look embarrassed. He did not look angry. Instead, he spoke clearly. "I was aware she was pretending." Gasps. "But I chose to continue the dinner because I was more interested in her honesty behind the act than the act itself." Reporters looked confused. "You knew?" someone asked. "Yes," Daniel replied, "and I respected her reason." The chairman of the board leaned back slowly, listening carefully. Daniel continued. "If investors are worried because I had dinner with a woman who tested my character, then they misunderstand my leadership." Strong words. Clear. "I will not make personal decisions based on gossip." The room remained quiet for a long moment, then suddenly clapping. Soft at first, then louder. Not from everyone, but from enough people to change the energy. Emily felt tears in her eyes. Not from fear, from relief. The narrative was shifting. Questions continued for another 20 minutes, but the tone was different now. Less mocking, more curious. When the conference finally ended, Daniel and Emily stepped down from the stage. His assistant whispered quietly, "Sir, social media reaction is changing. Support is increasing." Daniel simply nodded. Outside the building, the crowd was still large, but the mood had shifted. Instead of laughter, there were cameras flashing with excitement. As they entered the car again, Emily finally allowed herself to breathe deeply. "You didn't have to defend me like that," she said softly. Daniel looked at her. "Wasn't defending you," he replied. "I was choosing you." Her heart skipped. The city looked brighter now under the clear sky. But somewhere in his office across town, Victor Hale watched the live broadcast with narrowed eyes. He had expected panic, distance, weakness. Instead, Daniel had turned the attack into strength. Victor slowly smiled. Interesting, he murmured. If pressure doesn't break him, we increase the pressure. Back in the car, Emily looked at Daniel carefully. Is it over? She asked. He shook his head slightly. No. Her chest tightened again. This was only the first move. She looked out the window, realizing something important. Love was not just soft dinners and gentle words. Sometimes it stood in front of cameras. Sometimes it faced storms. And sometimes it stood against enemies. She turned back to him. Then we'll be ready. Daniel studied her face for a long second. And for the first time since this began, there was no test, no pretending, no mask. Just two people choosing to stand beside each other. But neither of them knew that Victor's next move would not attack Daniel's company. It would attack something much more fragile. Trust, and that would be the real test. For 2 days after the press conference, the city could talk about nothing else. News channels replayed Daniel's speech. Social media, which once laughed at Emily, was now divided. Some people admired her honesty. Others still doubted her intentions. But one thing was clear. The story was no longer simple gossip. It had become something bigger. Inside Daniel's company, tension still existed. A few board members remained unsure. Investors were watching closely. Every small movement in company shares was being studied like a warning sign. And Victor Hale was not silent. On the third morning, a new headline appeared. Anonymous source claims CEO's girlfriend has hidden financial ties. The article suggested that Emily's family owned shares connected indirectly to Daniel's competitors. It was twisted information. Half-truths mixed with lies. Emily stared at her phone, her hands trembling slightly. This isn't true, she whispered. Daniel read the article carefully. His face remained calm, but his eyes became colder. He's trying to create doubt, he said. But what if people believe it? She asked. They will, Daniel answered honestly. Some will. That answer hurt more than comfort. Later that afternoon, Daniel was called into an emergency board meeting. Emily waited alone in his office, the large windows showing the busy city below. She felt like she was standing in the middle of a war she never meant to join. Inside the meeting room, voices were raised. This is escalating, one board member said firmly. Every day there's a new headline. It affects investor confidence. Daniel, personal matters should not risk corporate stability. Daniel listened quietly. Then he spoke. If I remove her from my life to calm rumors, what message does that send? That you prioritize the company, someone replied. And what does that teach? Daniel asked calmly. That pressure controls me. Silence followed. Finally, the chairman spoke more gently. Daniel, no one is asking you to deny your feelings, or perhaps reduce public appearances. Let this cool down. Daniel considered it. He was not afraid of Victor, but he was aware of consequences. After the meeting ended, he returned to his office. Emily immediately stood up when she saw him. How bad? She asked softly. They're worried, he replied. She nodded slowly. I don't want to be the reason your company suffers. He stepped closer. You're not the reason, but I am the target. He didn't deny it. That evening, as they left the building together, cameras were waiting again. This time, the questions were sharper. Miss Emily, did your family invest in competitor companies? Is this relationship a strategy? Emily felt the pressure rising. Daniel's security guided them quickly into the car. Inside, silence filled the space. I can step back, Emily said quietly. Daniel turned toward her. What do you mean? I can disappear from public view. No events, no photos, no interviews. His expression hardened slightly. That's what he wants? I know, she said. But maybe if we remove the fuel, the fire dies. Daniel looked out the window for a long moment. He had built his entire career on control, strategy, timing, and now the battle was no longer just business. It was personal. That night, instead of going home, Daniel drove somewhere unexpected. They arrived at a quiet place outside the city, a hill overlooking the skyline. The lights below looked small and peaceful from that distance. Emily stepped out of the car slowly. "Why are we here?" she asked. Daniel walked a few steps ahead, then turned to face her. "When things become loud," he said softly, "I come here to think." The wind was gentle. The city noise felt far away. "I don't regret meeting you," he continued. Her heart tightened. But I need to know something clearly." She waited. "If this becomes harder, if attacks become personal, will you stand with me? Not for headlines, not for pride, but because you choose to." Her eyes filled slightly. "I'm scared of losing trust. You think I'll lose trust in you?" "I pretended on the first night," she admitted. "Maybe that planted doubt." Daniel stepped closer. "It didn't plant doubt," he said quietly. "Showed me you value character." She searched his eyes carefully. "Even now?" she asked. "Especially now." The wind grew slightly stronger. Below them, the city continued its busy life, unaware of the quiet decision being made on the hill above. Daniel took a slow breath. "Victor believes pressure will break us," he said. "He believes I'll choose reputation over relationship." Emily swallowed. "And will you?" Instead of answering immediately, Daniel reached into his coat pocket. Her heart skipped. He stepped even closer, his voice steady. "I built companies from nothing," he said. "I've faced competitors, failures, losses, but I never built anything meaningful alone." She stared at him, confused. He took out a small velvet box. Her breath stopped. "I didn't plan this because of him," Daniel continued. "I planned this because of you." He opened the box. Inside was a simple but elegant ring. No dramatic spotlight, no cameras, just the city lights below them. "I don't want a perfect image," he said softly. "I want a partner who challenges me, questions me, and stands beside me." He knelt down. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "Will you marry me?" For a second, she couldn't speak. This was not the dramatic proposal the media would expect. It was quiet, real, unexpected. "You're proposing in the middle of a scandal?" "Smile. I'm proposing in the middle of truth," he corrected gently. She laughed softly through tears. "Yes," she said. The word felt simple, but powerful. "Yes." He stood up and placed the ring on her finger. That moment, no headlines existed, no rivals, no board members. Just two hearts choosing each other. But fate had one more surprise. Unknown to them, a freelance photographer had followed their car from a distance, hoping for another scandal photo. Instead, he captured something else. Daniel kneeling, Emily crying. The ring visible under city lights. By morning, the image was everywhere. CEO proposes during corporate crisis. But this time, the public reaction was different. Instead of mockery, there was admiration. Instead of doubt, there was support. The story had changed. Victor watched the news in disbelief. He had tried to create weakness. Instead, he had created a stronger image. Investors reacted positively. Company shares stabilized. The board saw public approval rising instead of falling. Daniel had turned vulnerability into strength. And Emily, the girl who once pretended to look unattractive to test a man's heart, stood now beside him openly, confidently. The biggest shock was not the proposal. It was that love under pressure did not break. It grew stronger. As the city continued talking, Daniel held Emily's hand tightly at a small private dinner with close family that evening. No cameras. Allowed no business talk. Just warmth. Emily looked at him softly. "You know," she said, "this all started because I didn't trust rich men." He smiled slightly. "And now I trust one." He leaned closer. "That's enough." Outside, the world would continue judging, analyzing, speculating. But inside their small circle, something had become unbreakable. And somewhere, far away, Victor finally understood something important. He had tried to use love as a weapon. But love, when real, was not a weakness. It was power.